I enjoy filled things. I'm actually with Ryan on the donut thing, and a custard-filled donut is probably my favorite. I had a friend in high school whose family ran the local bakery in Watertown, and she actually ended up being my dance partner senior year in show choir. So when we would have early morning rehearsals, occasionally she would roll in with a custard-filled donut for me to get our dance rehearsals started, and they were the best. So custard-filled is my favorite. And I bring up filling because we often think about these foods. Like when I see a donut, I think about what's inside that donut. I want to know what's inside first, because what's inside can be important. And that is kind of what Jesus will talk about today. And he's done this many other times, where what's inside of us, what's in our hearts, is what's really important. And today, he's going to get at it by asking us to look inside of ourselves first before we actually kind of look at what's going on with somebody else. And this is in the context of seeing others' faults or failings and not judging them. And that's actually where he kicks off today's little passage, is that we're not supposed to judge others, all right? And as I see it, kind of what Jesus gets at without saying it directly is that as Christians, we were created to care, not condemn. So we were created to care for people and not condemn them. And that's kind of what we're going to look at today. We'll be in Matthew chapter 7. It'll just be verses 1 through 6 today. So Matthew 7, 1 through 6, it will be right up here behind me, as always, in your Bibles on the tables. If you would like to follow along there, I will be in the NIV translation. So we're going to read the whole passage, and then we'll kind of break it down and see what Jesus is teaching us about judging and looking at the inside of ourselves first. So let's do that. Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 6. It says this: "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the same measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your eye, and you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." All right. So, really uplifting passage about not judging others and having planks in our eyes and being trampled by pigs. So, what do we do with this? First thing, we're going to start off with just looking at verses 1 and 2, which is the whole piece about not judging others, or you will be judged in that same way. So let's think about what judging actually means first. That is this: it is a judge like we would think about in a trial, somebody that pronounces a condemnation, pronounces something like a verdict. You know, you would say, you are guilty and you are condemned for this. Now, Jesus teaches us not to do that. Do not condemn another person would be a way to think about it. Don't condemn somebody. And the key here is the person, because he's talking about not condemning a person. We're going to get to the action or what they did in a little bit, but he's teaching us right now it is not our place to judge or condemn a person. Why not? I mean, that's a great question. Why not? They're there. I'm here. I can see what they're doing is wrong. Because that's not who God made us to be. God didn't make us judge, jury, executioner, anything like that. God is the one that can judge. God's the one that's going to decide on that fate. He didn't create us to do that. And when we judge others, we take on the posture of God, or we take on the role of God. In essence, we try to play God. Or we've heard that with other things, that we maybe try to play God and take control over things that are things we're not supposed to control. And even if we say, God's going to do this, that's doing the same thing, because we don't know what God's going to do. Honestly, this is something that people in Christian leadership, pastors and leaders, have a hard time with and can run into if they're not careful, right? I get up here and I study the Bible and I talk to you about what I learn about it, and sometimes get to think I know what God's doing or what God's saying really well, but that still does not mean I'm created to judge or condemn anyone, right? And think about what judging or condemning or pronouncing something like that on another person can do. Can make them frustrated, make them angry, make them lose steam just trying to maybe be better, Romans 14:13 says, "Therefore let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister." We're all just trying to do, hopefully, the best we can. If you've ever run a race or run hurdles before, they're really hard to jump. All right, if you've never actually tried to jump a hurdle, they're hard enough on their own, and we have our own hurdles, so don't throw a hurdle in front of somebody else. That's what this is getting at. Don't do it because it makes it that much harder. That's not what we're supposed to do. Then the other danger is that when we judge, we will be judged by God in the same way. So our metric or standard of judgment is the same one that God will use. That's what Jesus is saying. Because it's easy to create a double standard. I'm going to judge Chris in this way and tell him he's super wrong for whatever he did, but then not accept that same type of judgment. I'm going to say, Chris, you're a terrible person for ripping on Sam earlier. Ripping on Sam is my job. Okay? But then when I rip on Sam, I'm not taking the same type of punishment. That's the double standard. We would be judged in the same way. Sam's a really good sport about all this, by the way, if you don't know him. All right? It's just this thing, right? We have to be held to the same standard. All right, so let's visualize this. Under the pads of paper on your table, there are 3 colors of cups. I need everybody at the table. You either need a blue or a purple cup. So if there's 2 of you, one of you blue, one of you purple. Doesn't matter which one. The green one's empty. That's intentional.
Aren't they pink?
I see that as purple. Oh, boy. Here we go. Fuchsia. Chris's shirt is purple. My shirt is pink. Chris's shirt is purple. This is a happy medium. Ashley's right. It's fuchsia. Good job, Ashley. Ashley's the arbiter here. She got it right. Okay, so here's what we're going to look at. Person with the blue cup, person with the fuchsia cup, you are friends. All right? Person with the fuchsia cup has done something wrong. So person with the blue cup is pronouncing judgment. That is fuchsia cup. You now need to put 6 of your candies in the green cup. That is your punishment. So put 6 of your candies in the green cup. Judgment doesn't benefit anybody. We got 6 in there? Okay. Now, okay, standard of judgment there. Blue cup. Now you've done something wrong. Same standard of judgment. 6 candies in the green cup. Go. 6. Blue cups, how many do you have left? None. Fuchsia cups, how many do you have left?
2.
You shouldn't have 2. You got to count to 6. Here's the thing. You both lost 6 candies for judging each other. Tough, right? Same standard of judgment. All right, to finish it, bring those green cups to me and Sam. I'm kidding. You don't actually have to do that. You can give it to Sam.
Don't give it to Sam.
Thank you. Look at that. Ooh. What do I even put in here? Snickers. FYI, so there's some dark chocolate candy. I did not realize they were almond filled when I bought those. I do not like nut filling, as we talked about earlier. Anyway, so that's the point here, right? So we're held to the same standard of judgment. I know that was a little silly illustration, but the point is we can't create a double standard. If we are condemning somebody to 6 pieces of their candy, we would be held to that too, even if that's all we have. That's what Jesus is saying God will do. Same standard of judgment. So what do we do with this? Think about the person for a little bit, not the action. We're going to get to the action again. Everybody has different failings, struggles, and sins. But our role is not to condemn them or to pronounce a judgment on the person for those failings. We can still respond, but respond the way you would want to be responded to about your own failings. Would you want somebody to tell you you are losing all 6 of your candies? No, I would guess not, unless you just hate candy for some reason. Then you might not care. What you would rather is that maybe that they respond with some grace, some forgiveness, and some truth. And truth is an important word here because we aren't excusing whatever this action or the shortcoming the person has, but we're just not condemning them for it. All right? We're just not condemning them for it. We're offering grace and truth and love and focusing on the value of the person. So we're not judging someone else. All right, now let's look at that action and how we figure out what the actions might be, or how would we actually talk to somebody about what they have done that maybe we see as wrong or even they see as wrong. Let's look at verses 3 through 5 again. So Matthew 7, 3 through 5, to see what Jesus has to say. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Now, this is a teaching that may have made people laugh. Jesus talks about a plank sticking out of their eye, or I've read it more times as like a log, so that's probably what you see up here as a log. Log or plank or some massive piece of wood sticking out from your eye. This is complete and total hyperbole. It's another teaching mechanism from Jesus. We've talked about this before, that Jesus likes different teaching mechanisms. This is one. He also uses, at other times, the camel going through the eye of a needle. Again, not serious, but something to make people think. So in this case, the speck of sawdust in somebody else's eye is what we would be seeing as their sin or failure or shortcoming. And the point Jesus makes with the fact that there's a plank in your own eye is that we have those too. We have our own sins or shortcomings or anything like that. So Jesus is encouraging self-awareness, self-attentiveness. And I don't think he means to say we have a plank and they have a sawdust that are, whatever it is, are so much bigger than everybody else's. I think the point is, if we're paying attention, we can see that we have our own stuff we need to work on, our own sins, our own faults, anything like that, our own behaviors that God would want us to work on. And that's what Jesus wants us to look at. And he doesn't want us to just beat ourselves up over it. I don't think he's saying that. I think he wants us to just recognize them and recognize our need for God in those, because that can lead to humility, to repentance, and to grace. And then those are things we can in turn share with someone else over their own speck that's in their eye, which, by the way, they would then hopefully see as a log or a plank. Because it doesn't say we can't help someone with their own faults or that we can't address it. And sometimes this passage gets taken that way, that we can never talk to someone else about something wrong maybe that we see that we're doing. That's not necessarily what Jesus is saying, I don't think. But what he is saying is we can't do it. We can't help them if we're completely blind to what's going on in our own lives, completely blind to our own sin. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. That's just ignorance. And what he's saying in verse 5 is ignorance leads to being hypocritical. We need to be able to see clearly enough to actually try to help someone. And we can't do that if we're not working on our own sins. We can't expect someone else to work on or remove their own shortcomings, their own failings, their own sins if we aren't doing the same thing. And again, we're not doing this out of judgment, but with love and with grace and with care. So we have to look on the inside first, all right? I was thinking about music when it came to this type of thing. And I like some old school music sometimes. I go back to Jackson 5, big fan of the Jackson 5 back in the day. My brother and I used to sing I'll Be There in the car together. Great song. But then the Jackson 5 gave us, obviously, Michael Jackson, king of pop himself, right? I love me some Michael Jackson. His music is great. Lots of fun, whenever it comes on. You got Thriller, which is a great dance. You got, The Way You Make Me Feel, woo! Right? Like that. Yeah, thank you. I stretched, Stace, don't worry. She gets worried that I'm going to hurt myself when I do my Michael Jackson kick. Mostly the hips. Yeah, I have really old man hips. But the point is, Michael Jackson had some great music. But he has one song that is probably my favorite, I think even better than Thriller and The Way You Make Me Feel, and that is Man in the Mirror. It came out from the Bad album. All right, so it was written in 1988, one of the few songs, actually, that Michael didn't write. It was written by Glenn Ballard and a woman named Sita Garrett. And his producer, Quincy Jones, famous producer from back in the day as well, said, we need a song on this album that will be an anthem that would spread sunshine to the world. So they presented this song, and apparently Michael loved it. And they were worried about it because he hadn't accepted songs from outside of his little circle for a long time. But he said he loved it. And when one of the writers, Sita Garrett, said about it, she's like, this song has a purpose, and that's to make a difference. On the outside, you have to first start from within. Some of the lyrics are, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. All right? If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself. and make the change. And the video was like a montage of events and famous people, and there was a lot of discussion about homelessness and poverty going on. That to change it, we have to look at ourselves. So even when you want to see change, it has to start within yourself. And I think that's what Jesus is really getting at. To help someone change, we have to be willing to work on ourselves and change as well. So we have to pay attention to our log or our plank. We have to pay attention to our own lives and be willing to work on it. Be willing to work on the things that God has put on our hearts that we need to correct or to change or to get better at. And it's okay to have shortcomings or failures and to be honest about them. One of our values at Hometown is authenticity. And it starts with, at Hometown, we value authenticity. Why? Nobody's perfect. That's how we started. Nobody's perfect. We all have these logs or these planks or specks of sawdust or whatever we want to call them. We all have them. All right? But the fact is, we just have to be honest about them. And when we are, we can then bring up one of our other values in connection and come together to work on them. Right? If I want to work with somebody else on something they're struggling with, I have to be honest about what I need to work on myself. All right? We can do it together, but to do that well, to do it the right way, to do it the way Jesus is teaching us to do it, we have to look inside ourselves first and make sure we're aware of what's going on in our own lives first. All right? So we don't judge others, but then before we even bring up something to somebody else, we look inside ourselves first and realize what's going on in our own lives, and we're aware of that. All right? So that's kind of how Jesus teaches us. Then we finish with verse 6, which I'm going to call as kind of a verse to pick your spot. All right? So let's read this verse, and we'll see what this verse has to say. This is a kind of a weird verse, to be completely honest. Matthew 7:6 says, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." There's a lot of discussion about this verse, about does it actually fit here? Should go with this section? Should go with the next one? Is this something Jesus said? And Matthew's like, this looks like a fun place to put it when I'm writing this story. We're not really sure. But here's what the verse at least means. All right? Dogs were considered unclean animals back in Jesus' day. So you wouldn't give them sacred food, basically, something that is ritualistically clean or prepared well for people, or that you would offer to God or something like that. Why? The dog wouldn't respect it. It would be considered a waste, so you don't give that to a dog. Then the pearls to pigs, right? If you have nice pearls, something valuable, you wouldn't give it to a pig, because if you've ever seen a pig, they're dirty and they just stomp around all over the place. They would then in turn crush the pearls, and then possibly, apparently, as this verse says, they might turn and then come after you. I never really think of pigs as like vicious. I'm going to need to go talk to my son, the animal expert, be like, hey, is a pig ever going to come after a person? I don't know, but according to this, it might. And the point here is this. We want to give what's sacred or give what's valuable where it will be appreciated, and we want it to be used well. All right, not outrightly rejected or damaged or destroyed. I was thinking about the movie The Sandlot, old classic movie. Okay, you got Benny the Jet and all these kids. Brief synopsis. Has anybody not seen the movie? All right, cool. We'll give a brief synopsis here. So a bunch of kids, new kid moves to town, and he wants to fit in with all the other kids, and they all play baseball at the Sandlot in their summer. So he goes, and they're playing baseball, and he's learning how to play. He's not very good. He's getting better and better. But the issue is, if they ever hit a home run out of their field, it goes over this fence into this guy's backyard where there's a big dog that lives that they just refer to as the Beast. All right? Now, he's a very nice dog, but they think he's this big old beast. So what happens is they're out of baseball. They don't have the money to go buy a baseball. So the new kid that moves to town says, hey, I got a ball I can go grab. So he does. He goes into his stepdad's office and grabs a ball that's on a mantle displayed. Now, first key right here, this is probably something valuable. It's displayed nicely, something. Well, he takes it, they play. Now, he hits a home run. Great, right? All of a sudden, he's like, no, I got to get it back. I got to get it back. Like, why? It's autographed by Babe Ruth. So he used the baseball, autographed by arguably the best baseball player ever, ball that's worth a ton of money, and he plays baseball with it and hits it over a fence. that is something incredibly valuable that was used the wrong way. Now, his dad didn't intend him to use it that way, but he did. It was something valuable. It wasn't appreciated for what it is. It wasn't used well. And I think that's maybe how we can fit this verse in with verses 1 through 5. So we want to be careful with what we deem sacred. And we're going to say that is how we are able to approach someone about their own shortcomings, about their specs. So when we're going to talk with somebody about that. Now, this doesn't mean that we ever should hold back God's love or his grace or forgiveness from someone. But I think, let's take it as being cautious about talking about someone else's spec or sins. And why? Why do we need to be cautious? Well, some aren't ready to hear it yet. Maybe there are people that don't know Jesus at all, and you see something in their life as wrong. Well, if they don't know Jesus yet, they won't see it that way. Maybe there are people that do know Jesus that have something wrong in their lives and just they've had so much going on that the last thing that will actually help them is hearing somebody else call out what's going on in their life. All right? It just might not be received well. All right? Non-Christians may not see what they're doing is wrong. And guess what can happen if you bring it up? They trample, as this would say, on what you have to say. Maybe now they have even a worse taste for God in their mouth than they did. Maybe now they're upset with you because you're just judging me like all the Christians would do. They're not in a place to hear that. Or if it's somebody that doesn't know Jesus and they're struggling, they're having a hard time, and we call it out there, it just beats them down even more. They're not in a place to hear it. It could hurt them. They could in turn hurt you or reject that message. So what do we do with that? How do we know when we can still go to somebody with this thing that we have that's valuable? Because it is valuable to be able to talk to somebody about what's going on in their life, especially if it's something wrong. Relationships. I think relationships are so incredibly important here. Understand your relationships and listen for God about which ones are in the place where you can talk to people about this stuff, because there will be those. All right, I have friends that I can talk to about stuff like that. I also have people in my life that it would not be the right place to bring that kind of stuff up to. All right? When we do have those conversations, though, again, we have them in love and grace and, of course, truth. Because we can do this. All right? I don't want it to get taken as we can never talk to someone about sin or about struggles in their lives. But it has to be done cautiously, because it's something we value, because we value that person, we value the message of Jesus, we value his grace and his forgiveness, and we want that received well. It's so valuable, because that type of care, that type of grace maybe is something they haven't experienced before, and it's value, and we want it received well. All right, so this week, it's going to kind of be some questions I'd like you to consider for yourself. When you see a fault in someone else, where does your mind go? This is back to the first couple verses about not judging. Where does your mind go? Challenge yourself to think about that person as the person and not whatever they just did that you deem wrong. And then honestly, what are your own logs or your own planks? Take an honest look at what they are. It's okay to have them. Okay, we all do. Right? I have them. Everybody here has them. But look at what they are. And then are you working to remove them? Are you talking with God? Are you talking with somebody else? Are you working on those issues that you maybe need to fix or that God has put on your heart to work on? And then who can you help? Who is in a place in your life that could receive this valuable gift, this valuable help with grace and love and forgiveness and truth? Is there somebody that is in that place right now that you could? Because we don't want to judge others, but we do want to help them when we can, when they're in a place to receive that kind of help. And we can do that together. And I really think that's what Jesus is getting at with this whole passage, that is tricky and sometimes tough, that we're not supposed to judge someone and we need to look inside ourselves, but we still want to be connected, have relationships, and help when we can. And I think that's what Jesus is getting at. Not to condemn. That's not what we were created for, but to care. So let's pray about that this morning. God, we thank you for this passage again. As tough as it can be to get through and figure out what we can do with this. God, I thank you that we're people that you created to care for others, to love and to show grace to others, and not to condemn or to judge. God, I pray that you would put it on all our hearts to see the people in our lives as people in need of your grace and your love, and help us learn how we can show that in a way that they take it well, that's valued, that is used well with this incredible gift that you offer. God, I pray that you would put on our hearts whatever our planks or logs or sins or whatever we want to call it, God, in our own lives, that you would put those on our hearts, and that you would put it on our hearts to start working on those. And God, we just thank you again that there is truth in this, that you talk to us about what you want us to do and how to live and what we might need to change. We also thank you that there is grace as we struggle through it and we wrestle through it, that even as we fall, we can get back up and keep working on it again. We thank you for that. In your name, amen.